there's a 25% chance, 1 in 4, you'll be disabled at some point in your lifetime by the time you're age 65.
Yeah.
And what we don't, literally the way the role of an executor has evolved just in terms of the complexity of the role, the legal obligation of the role. The way I choose an executor today is I pick the person I like the least, and I put them as my executor.
It's true. It is a lot of work.
What I would do, I'd take all my wealth and I'd say, okay, let's say I have a bunch of nieces and nephews. I'd sit them all down with me about 5 years before I think I'm going to pass on. I'd say, okay, one of you is going to get my inheritance. The one who's nicest to me. You all have an equal chance.
I like
show me your love.
Show me your love.
Yeah.
Welcome to another episode of Small Change, Big Gains. Hey, Sean.
Hey, Amy, how are you doing?
Good. We're talking about signaling all singles today.
You know what the best thing about being single is?
What?
Unlike people that have partners, you're not as much of a victim of continuous input.
True. Actually, that is one of the benefits we're going to talk about. So what we thought we'd talk about is financial planning. We often, when we're talking about it, we're talking about a couple scenario, but financial planning is a little bit different. So whether you're single by choice, whether you're widowed, divorced, or just life circumstances, there's a little bit more intentionality that has to go through planning, because in the off chance that something happens to you, and we'll kind of roll into some of the topics, but you don't have that buffer as another income perhaps.
Right.
So it's what are the things you need to think about when you're saving for retirement, when you're thinking about your insurance, when you're thinking about your estate plan. A little bit more thought has to go into it.
So what are the things that single people ought to be considering versus, let's say, a traditional couple?
Well, think about insurance. Let's start with insurance.
Okay.
So insurance, in a very practical way, it's not about fear. It's not to scare anybody. But if something were to happen to you where you became disabled, so you're unable to work, you don't have that second income that you can rely on. So making sure that you have a proper policy, insurance policy, to cover off in that scenario, that you've got that steady cash flow to get you through that period of time.
And I think what a lot of people don't realize, like we have a fear of mortality. What we don't really think about is the reality that how much, it's very probable we could be disabled in our lifetime. In fact, it's if you're age 20, there's a 25% chance, 1 in 4, you'll be disabled at some point in your lifetime by the time you're age 65.
Yeah.
And what we don't realize is, well, we all associate to a large degree a disability with a physical injury or ailment.
Yeah.
Oftentimes it's not that, it's illness that renders you disabled.
Absolutely. So making sure that you've built in that plan. And a lot of people will go, oh, well, I have a work plan. Well, a work plan might not be sufficient. So it's really understanding what is your work plan, what is the coverage that you have. And it's a good kind of matter of course to have your own personal policy, because you can carry it with you through different careers that you go through. So it's important to look at.
How does one, if you're single, I mean, look, people deal with it in all aspects of life, but it might be of a particular concern when you're single. How do you handle a disproportionate fear of mortality when you're looking at your life insurance needs?
Well, I think when you're planning, you have to assess the cost. You have to think about what scenarios you would be in, and this is where we'll flow in when we talk about estate, but powers of attorney. Like, what if you became incapacitated? Right, for a period of time. Who's the person or people? Again, often you default to a spouse. Who are you naming in that scenario, right?
Well, and there's two, just as a quick reminder, there's two types of power of attorneys.
Yes.
If you're living, one is a financial power of attorney, another one's a health power of attorney.
And they can be the same people or they can be different people.
Depending on who you elect to be either one, right?
Yeah, and I know that's a conversation when we're chatting with singles that becomes, you can tell it's a little bit stressful and a little bit worrisome, because it's, well, I don't want to be a burden to somebody, but who am I asking? Who is the trusted person I would put in place? And I think oftentimes there's a little bit of this avoidance of, well, I don't really like to think about that, so I won't talk about it and won't do anything. But it's really, really crucial you put that person in and making sure that they're aware that you're your person.
Yeah.
And then also knowing your options. There is the ability to have a corporate power of attorney for the finance piece only. They won't do your healthcare piece. You'd have to name somebody for that. But there are options if you want to hire a corporate power of attorney to handle covering off your bills, making sure your expenses all get paid, that kind of component. And a lot of clients will consider that now.
Now, there's different types of insurance you can consider too.
Yes.
If you're single, what might be a more attractive option to look at versus another? Should you consider them all? And what would be some of the considerations you'd use in terms of determining what type of insurance process is
I think
the best?
it's good just to do an overall insurance review, right? So looking at, we touched on disability, but there's also long-term care insurance. Because again, long-term care in Canada is expensive, and I think it's a real eye-opener for a lot of people when they understand what those costs are associated. And again, as a single person, you don't have the ability to share in those costs.
Yep.
So there's critical illness. So again, if you get hit with, a form of cancer or something like that, it's a lump sum that pays out to help kind of buffer. Maybe you've got a mortgage to pay off, or gives you some of that liquidity to take the pressure off. Again, just looking at that overall picture, when you're doing your plan, that's a big component that goes into it, looking at the risks.
There's no right or wrong answer to this,
No.
but I think if, for instance, as you get older, the odds of one being widowed
Right.
is greater. And if I call a spade due to mortality rates and so on and so forth, the odds of a female being widowed versus a male being widowed is far greater. You have to ask the question, if you are indeed a widow and you're let's say later in life,
Yeah.
if you do need help,
Yeah.
what impact is that going to have on your family, your children, because if you're, let's say 80 to 85 or 90 years old and you need additional help because listen, things get harder to do. Well, it's very likely that your children, if they have families of their own and so on and so forth, they're very busy too. That's why they call it the sandwich generation.
Yeah.
You need to actually really consider in a very in-depth way, to what extent do I want to encumber my children to help me or you? And if you have an answer, then you can, if you do it early enough, you can augment it with different type of processes to help financially buffer that type of situation.
So it opens up that dialogue. So I think that's important. So if we switch gears, so that's kind of the insurance bucket that we just chatted about. So
from 30,000 feet.
30,000 feet. Yes. Yeah, it's a full review. It's very in depth. A lot of questions that go into it.
You're going to feel pretty good about it. Okay.
Absolutely. Retirement. Being single in retirement, again, whether it's by choice, circumstances, in that reality. Again, it's the benefit, I would say, to your point, the way you opened, Sean, is you're not coordinating two visions. Like, you get to set your own path, and you don't have any input from anybody else.
Isn't that nice?
Yeah.
Huh? Isn't that fun? I know no married or coupled person would ever say that out loud, but it's kind of true.
Well, it's because when we do financial planning with couples, it's sometimes we'll ask a question, and you could just see well, I didn't know you thought that. Well, I feel like this. I'm like, oh boy, we've stirred something up here. But it's getting the conversation
going. It's one of my favorite
going.
lines in The Simpsons, by the way, where Bart asks Homer, he goes, Homer, why is it women seem to suck the fun out of everything? And Homer says, Bart, you say that now, but when you're older, you'll just think it.
Yeah.
Anyway, I mean, you're right, though. I mean, retirement, as you approach it, you can have divergent thinking versus if you're single.
Yeah.
You have let's say the capacity and the ability to actually just create your own vision.
Well, and I find our clients that are single really love having the meetings that we have, because we become that sounding board. We become that other person where it's like, let me bounce this. This is what I've been thinking. What do we think? And then we model out some scenarios, and it's actually really fun to see them carve their path.
But things to consider when you're single. Okay, there's a couple things.
Yeah.
I think one, two people, if you're sharing one living environment, can live cheaper than one.
Yes.
Because your fixed costs have split between two people rather than one person. Secondly, rightly or wrongly, the way you income split in Canada really disproportionately benefits a couple living together, especially if they're married under a marriage contract.
Right.
Versus a single person. I'm talking about pension splitting and so on and so forth, and then that helps both people engaged in the marriage or however they're coupled reduce their income so they both qualify for old age security.
Yeah.
If you're living alone or you're single, you don't have those options. All the income falls into your hands. So the earlier you can start contemplating how I'm going to receive my income, where I'm going to receive my income, will help you manage so that if there's certain benefits you want to receive, you make sure you remain within the income thresholds received. I'll touch on that later on.
Yeah. And I think that's the key. Is just it's thinking about it, I would say, a little bit earlier, because the risks of not having that extra buffer, that can really be really helpful.
The other risk you have to contemplate when you're single, I think you have to contemplate no matter what, but
Yeah.
I think it takes a deeper meaning when you're single, is there's two types of risks. There's risk to your capital
Yes.
in the short run
Yep.
and in the long run, but there's also a risk that you could live a really long time. Right?
Yep.
Now, I mentioned the odds of a female outliving their male counterpart is being way more dramatic, or it's going to be a heavier probability that's going to happen than a male outliving their female counterpart.
Right.
Well, the other side of that is if you're healthy as a female and you reach the age of 85, I don't have the actual actuarial table in front of me.
Right.
But if you're healthy at age 85, you're female, you could live to 95 to 100.
Easily.
And
And it's
that's
funny,
today.
when we first started doing
That's
financial,
today.
that's today.
There's
And
health advantage, healthcare advances that are coming down the pipe that
100%.
could make you live even longer.
It's so true. Actually, when we started doing financial planning, the default, when you have to pick your longevity, it was 90. Well, now it's bumped out to 95 for men and 97 for women.
Yep.
And I can't tell you how many clients will say, oh, I'm not going to live that long. Guess what? You are living that long, because we have clients approaching 100 and in their hundreds. I'm like, it's happening.
And I hate to point out single female people, but at the end of the day, there's study after study that would suggest that females are more risk adverse than male investors. They're overarchingly they're better. The studies would suggest that, but there's a contemplation that needs to happen, especially if you're female, but male too, which asks the question, am I taking enough short-term calculated risk so that when I'm 97, 98, 99, I don't run out of money, because you need the growth.
And when we say risk adverse for females, I think what it boils down to is it's having the planning up front so that you know which bucket, right? You have that emergency bucket.
Yep.
So that you have this long-term bucket. And I don't think enough planning goes into that. And a lot of women who take time away to help with an aging parent, stepping away for kids, like all these other reasons of why they step out, that emergency bucket needs to be taken very seriously and very thoughtful, so that you get the peace of mind, so that you can say, this is my long-term bucket and I'll let it go.
And those are the conversations you have to ask.
Absolutely.
And there's a lot of things that need to be contemplated. Like, for instance, especially women that are widowed earlier in life rather than later in life. Let's face it, oftentimes it's the woman that takes the time out of their career to raise the children and so on and so forth, which impacts, I don't think as much today, but still there, impacts their career trajectory and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So there's all these things that are worth a conversation to make sure you're getting it right. And there's a certain expertise. I know you're great at these conversations. I'm okay.
You're pretty darn good, Sean.
But these are things that need to happen.
I think it's just being curious in people's lives and asking questions, and it brings out I never thought about that, or what am I going to do? And that's kind of the fun, and I think we enjoy it.
And I think it creates an onus, too, to really understand what are the levers that you have at your disposal as you save for retirement, approach retirement, and then engage in retirement. Understanding how the mechanics, to a certain degree, you don't have to understand it like an expert, but you have to understand to a certain degree the mechanics and differences between an RRSP, a LIRA, which is a
locked-in retirement
account. Sorry, I just had a Biden. What a registered retirement income fund is, life income fund is. By the way, this I think is the most misunderstood tool we have in the toolbox for most Canadians. Where and how to lever a TFSA within your tax planning. And then also, what role does real estate play, if any, in your overall circumstances?
Absolutely.
And I'll give you a small example. I mentioned about you're being single. All the income falls into your hands.
Yeah, Canada pension, old age security, all of that income.
All of that, which basically, bumps you up in a quicker manner to the threshold for old age security, which I believe is around $87,000 a year right now. I'd have to double check that. But the bottom line is it's in that range. You're going to get there a lot quicker than if you're married with someone and you can income split. If you were able to withdraw from a TFSA, if your TFSA can maybe perhaps play a stronger role within your retirement planning, withdrawals in retirement from your TFSA do not impact your income, thereby giving you a little more wiggle room to stay under that threshold for qualifying for full old age security.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. It's a good point. Estate planning for singles. This is a biggie. Kind of like what we talked about earlier. It's who do I name? I'm not sure if I want to divulge all my financial stuff, because you can be single with kids or single without kids, right? So
Yeah.
I think with kids, the default is, well, okay, I'll name my kids maybe the beneficiaries, and
Right.
I'll name them maybe executors, powers of attorney, pros
Yeah.
and cons. We can go through that. But without kids, you can see oh my gosh, how involved is this? Who do I name? I don't want to be a burden. Do I have to tell them how much money I have? Like how intimate is this going to get? And
Or
it's
you
a
can
real.
make it fun.
You could make it fun.
Like what I would.
No.
What I would do.
What?
Okay, I'd take all my wealth and I'd say, okay, let's say I have a bunch of nieces and nephews. I'd sit them all down with me about 5 years before I think I'm going to pass on. I'd say, okay, one of you is going to get my inheritance.
Compete.
The one who's nicest to me.
Compete.
You all have an equal chance.
I like
Show
that.
me your love.
Show me your love.
Yeah.
And little do they know you're out spending it all and leave them.
Well, no, but you can save in areas where you wouldn't think about saving.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I wouldn't need an Uber account.
Well, there you go. There you
Right?
go.
They drive you everywhere.
They drive you everywhere.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yep.
This is true.
We have to worry
Actually,
about
Sean, I
designated
think you're
driving.
onto something here. This
Anyway,
is
I
the new
digress.
norm. I like it.
I tell little jokes. I don't mean to kid. I don't mean to make light of it.
I think it's good. But I think it's the whole point of talking about your estate plan is so that you're adding clarity, so that you're removing this fear and complication that could potentially unfold, right?
That's right.
And so thinking about who is that person. And again, you can look at options. If you don't have somebody that you would want to consider, or, if the burden thing is a real issue, or you don't think somebody has the energy to be an executor, because it's a lot of work, which I know we're going to chat about at a different point in time.
Yeah, that's actually a totally different
It's
podcast.
a totally different
Look,
podcast about the work of an
You know what? If
executor.
you really want, literally the way the role of an executor has evolved, just in terms of the complexity of the role, the legal obligation of the role, the way I choose an executor today is I pick the person I like the least, and I put them as my executor.
It's true. It is a lot of work. So again, looking at corporate executor as an option, I know a lot of our single clients, they might name somebody, but then they'll name maybe a backup as a corporation so that they don't have to worry about constantly updating that. And thinking about where you want to leave your money. Again, nieces and nephews, if you have your own kids. But charitable organizations, friends, like you can name whoever you want, really, right?
People that are important to you in your life.
Absolutely.
You could be anything you want. Like, I don't know if anyone would do this, but you could leave it to a pet, for crying out loud. If you really want your pet to live in
Karl
luxury.
Lagerfeld did that. I don't think the cat has gotten all of the money yet. I think that's in the courts right now.
You know what the cat said in response to that?
What?
Meow.
Oh, yeah. It's true. But thinking about who would be the person for healthcare decision, and also having the conversation with that person. I think that's the scary part. A lot of people don't want to have that conversation, but letting them know, like, I've named you as a trusted contact, and I hope that's the role that you're willing to play for me, and letting other members of your family know that.
So being single doesn't necessarily make financial planning harder.
Yeah.
But it enables you to be more direct.
Yeah.
100% customizable to your circumstances, and it gives you the opportunity to be very intentional in terms of what you're doing. There's no dilution of intent if you're single and you're directing your funds to wherever you need it to go.
Absolutely.
All right, so what's the CTA, Amy?
Sean.
CTA.
The call to action. Well, the call to action
Is that what that means?
Yeah, call to action. Call to action is book a time with your advisor. Do not be fearful of these things. Clarity just ultimately will reduce stress.
100%.
And so getting it down on paper, going through the process, and again, you have full control over your situation without any input. And take some joy and liberty in that, and explore.
Yeah, and it doesn't need to be complicated.
It doesn't need to be complicated. So till next time, it's a little small change to lead to a big gain.